Tell me something honest. When was the last time someone helped you without being asked, without expecting anything back, without reminding you of it afterward? Really think, because if that memory is hard to find, maybe the world has been taking far more from you than it ever gave back. This is the story of Ethan, and somewhere in this story you might find yourself. Ethan was 28 years old. He lived in apartment 54 of a gray, busy building in the middle of a crowded city, the kind of city that never sleeps and never thanks you. He was a graphic designer by passion and profession, the kind of person whose creative mind could turn a blank screen into something beautiful. But that gift, nobody at his office really saw it. What they saw was something else entirely. They saw that Ethan never said no. Call him at midnight because your presentation crashes. He answers by the second ring. Ask him to cover your Friday shift even though he had bought a concert ticket 3 months ago. He smiles and says, "Sure, go ahead." Need to borrow money that you will probably never return. He opens his wallet without you even finishing the sentence. There was a running joke at his office that Ethan was the human version of a customer service hotline available 24 hours, 7 days a week, always patient, always willing, never charging extra. At his apartment building, it was no different. His neighbor Marcus from 3B knocked on his door every other evening like clockwork. "Ethan, can you proofread this email?" "Ethan, my laptop is doing something weird." "Ethan, can you just look at this for 5 minutes?" And those 5 minutes always turned into 2 hours, and those 2 hours always turned into Ethan eating cold dinner alone at 11 p.m. while Marcus slept soundly. In his well-organized apartment, Ethan told himself this was what good people did. He told himself that kindness was his identity. He told himself that one day, all of this would come back to him. The universe kept score, didn't it? But the universe, it turns out, doesn't keep score. People do. And the people around Ethan had stopped keeping score a long time ago because they knew the bill would never come. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. It started with an email. Ethan was eating breakfast when his phone buzzed and he saw the sender's name and nearly choked Studio Noir, a boutique creative agency in the city that had won design awards 3 years running. The place Ethan had dreamed about working since his second year of college, when he had seen their campaign for a children's hospital plastered across every billboard in the city and thought, "I want to make things that feel like that." He had applied to them twice before and heard nothing. This time they had written back. He read the email once, twice, 5 times. They liked his work. They had an opening. They wanted to meet him in person Friday, 10 a.m. sharp. For the first time in what felt like years, Ethan felt something electric move through his chest. Not the relief of having helped someone else. Not the exhausted satisfaction of being useful. This was something different. This was hunger. Real, raw, personal hunger for something that belonged only to him. He spent that night reworking his portfolio, not for someone else's deadline, not to save someone else's presentation, for himself. He went to bed at 2 a.m. smiling, set 2 alarms, and for once slept without his phone face up on the nightstand. Wednesday and Thursday passed in a blur of preparation. He practiced answers in front of the bathroom mirror. He chose his outfit. He printed his portfolio on quality paper for the first time in his life. He was ready, and then Thursday night happened. At 9:47 p.m., his phone lit up. It was Priya, a colleague who sat 2 desks away from him and had borrowed his help at least a dozen times without once returning the favor. Her voice was shaking. Her project files for a major client presentation had corrupted. She had tried everything. She didn't know who else to call. The presentation was Friday at 9. "Ethan, you know this software better than anyone. Please, if I lose this client, I lose my job." Ethan sat on his couch with the phone pressed to his ear. His interview was at 10. Her presentation was at 9. If he stayed up helping her, he would be a wreck by morning. He should have said no. He knew he should say no. He said yes. He worked through the entire night. They fixed the corrupted files. They rebuilt the presentation from scratch. They finished at 6:23 in the morning. Priya said, "Thank you so much, you're a lifesaver," and hung up. Ethan set 3 alarms, lay down on his couch fully dressed, and fell into the deep, unconscious sleep of a completely empty person. When he opened his eyes, sunlight was cutting a sharp line across the floor. He looked at his phone. 10:47 a.m. He lay there for a full minute, not moving, not breathing normally, just staring at the ceiling of his apartment, his very ordinary apartment that he had never quite gotten around to decorating because he was always too busy helping other people decorate their lives. He had missed the interview. His dream had called. He had been asleep, exhausted from carrying someone else's weight, unable to answer. He texted Priya to ask how it went. She replied 6 hours later, "Amazing, client loved it. Big win for the team." There was a small celebration emoji at the end. No mention of what he had given up. No, "Hey, is everything okay?" No acknowledgement that a human being had sacrificed something real so that her presentation could be perfect. Just the glow of her success and the quiet smoke of a candle that had burned out. That evening, Ethan sat on his apartment floor. The portfolio pages were scattered around him, the ones he had worked so hard on, the ones that had been almost good enough to get an interview at Studio Noir. He wasn't crying. He was past the kind of sadness that produces tears. He was sitting in something worse, the hollow, silent realization that he had been disappearing, slowly, for years. Not dramatically, not all at once, just piece by piece, favor by favor, yes by yes, until the person sitting on that floor barely resembled the person who had once stayed up dreaming about making things that mattered. There was a knock at his door. He almost didn't get up, but he did. It was Mrs. Chen, his neighbor from Tuea. She was in her 70s, quiet and sharp-eyed, and Ethan had carried her groceries up 4 flights of stairs every single week for 2 years without ever being asked twice. She was standing at his door, not with a request, not with a favor, but with a small ceramic bowl of hot soup covered with a cloth napkin. She looked at his face and didn't say anything for a moment. Then she walked in, sat down on the floor beside him without waiting for an invitation, the way only truly wise people dare to do, and placed the soup in his hands. "You look like someone who just realized they've been running in the wrong direction," she said softly. He told her everything. The interview, the night, Praya's emoji, the portfolio on the floor. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting. When he finished, she didn't offer sympathy. Instead, she turned and pointed at the small candle burning on Ethan's windowsill, the one he always kept lit, because the apartment felt less lonely with something warm glowing in the corner. "What happens to that candle," she said slowly, "when it burns for an entire room all night for everyone inside it?" Ethan looked at the flame for a long moment. "It melts," he said. "It runs out." "Yes," she said. "It gives its light, its warmth, its entire body. And by the time morning comes and the room is finally bright, the candle is gone. Not tired, not just dim, gone completely. And nobody in that room ever stopped to say, 'Wait, where did the candle go?' because they were too busy enjoying the warmth it left behind." The room was very quiet. "You are that candle, Ethan," she said, "and you have been melting yourself down inch by inch for people who never once asked how much of you was left." He looked down at the soup in his hands. His throat felt tight. "So what do I do?" he asked. "Stop helping everyone? Become someone cold?" Mrs. Chen shook her head with a small, firm look. "The word people use to control you is selfish," she said. "They use it like a weapon. They point it at you the moment you try to protect your own energy, and suddenly you shrink back and open your door again. But I want you to think about something. When you board an airplane and the cabin loses pressure, what does the announcement tell you to do first?" Ethan was quiet. "Put on your own mask," he said quietly, before helping anyone else. "Because," she said, "a person who has no oxygen cannot save another person. A candle that has melted away cannot light anyone's path, and a man who has given every ounce of himself to other people has nothing left to give his own dream." She stood up and walked toward the door. She stopped with one hand on the frame and turned back. "For the next 7 days, before you say yes to anyone, I want you to ask yourself one single question, just one. What am I saying no to for myself? When I say yes to this, just ask it. You don't have to change the world in 7 days. Just ask the question, see what you find." She left. Ethan sat in the quiet for a long time. He looked at the candle. It was nearly a quarter melted already. The next morning, Marcus knocked at his door before Ethan had even made coffee. "Ethan, I need you to check over my project files before the morning meeting. Just an hour." Ethan stood at the door with the question alive in his head. What am I saying no to for myself if I say yes to this? His portfolio unfinished, his career paused, his morning, the only quiet hour he ever had. He looked at Marcus and said, "I can't today. I've got work of my own that can't wait any longer." Marcus stared at him. "Seriously, you always help me." "I know," Ethan said, "but not today." The door closed. Ethan's hands were shaking slightly. The guilt arrived immediately, knocking around inside him like something trapped. He sat at his desk anyway. He opened his own work files. He told himself to give it 1 hour before deciding if he'd done the right thing. 4 hours later, he was still at his desk. He had completed 2 design pieces that had been sitting unfinished for 3 months. He leaned back and looked at the screen and felt something move through him that he hadn't felt in a very long time. Not relief. Not the hollow satisfaction of being useful to someone else. This was cleaner than that. This was pride. Real, uncontaminated, personal pride in his own work. On day 3, an old college friend called asking to borrow money. For the 3rd time. Money that had never come back either of the first 2 times. What am I saying no to for myself? My own stability. My own future. The small financial safety net I've been trying to build for 2 years. "I'm not able to do that right now," Ethan said. His voice sounded different than he expected, steadier, more like himself. The friend was cold. "Fine, whatever." The call ended. Ethan put the phone on the table and sat with it, waiting for the guilt. It came briefly and then it passed, and what arrived after it was quiet. a stillness he didn't have a name for. He realized he had been so afraid of people being disappointed in him that he had never stopped to notice how disappointed he was in himself. Day 5, he put his phone on silent at 9 p.m. He had been conditioned his entire adult life to keep that phone face up. Volume on, always available, always reachable. That night he turned it over and left it that way. He made tea. He sat by the window. He read the first 3 chapters of a book he had bought 14 months ago and never opened. He went to bed at 10:30 and slept until morning without interruption. He woke up feeling like a different version of himself, lighter. Like something that had been sitting on his chest for years had simply decided to get up and leave. And that same morning, Day 6 Studio Noir emailed again. Their first choice candidate had backed out. The position was still open. Was Ethan still interested in coming in? He read the email once. He didn't read it 5 times like last time. He didn't need to. He wrote back in 30 seconds, "Yes, I'll be there." He walked into Studio Noir on a quiet Thursday morning with a portfolio he had actually finished, not rushed, not borrowed from old work, but genuinely finished, with 2 new pieces that showed who he was becoming rather than who he had been. He sat in that interview room and answered every question with the kind of focus that belongs to someone who has recently remembered what they actually want. He wasn't performing. He wasn't anxious. He was simply present, fully, completely, honestly present. 3 days later, the offer letter landed in his inbox. He sat in apartment 54 on that same floor where he had fallen apart and held the offer letter in both hands. He thought about Priya's celebration emoji. He thought about Marcus's genuinely surprised face when the door had closed on him for the first time. He thought about the candle. He was still the same person who cared about people. That hadn't changed. But something else had changed, something structural, something at the foundation of how he moved through the world. He would still help, he would still give, but from a place of fullness now, on his own terms, at a cost he chose. Not from the bottom of an empty cup, and not while his own life waited outside in the rain. He walked to the window. The candle was there, still burning, but this time he had lit a new one, a fresh one, full, not for anyone else. Just because a warm light in the corner made the room feel like it belonged to someone who was worth it. So here is the question I need to leave you with. Are you Ethan? Are you the first person everyone calls and the first person everyone forgets? Do you live in that exhausting tension between wanting to help and desperately needing someone to help you? Are you still waiting for the day people return what you gave them while knowing, quietly, that day is not coming? Then hear this not as advice, but as something you already know and have been too tired to say out loud. Your availability is not your identity. Your willingness to sacrifice is not something to be proud of if it is costing you your own life. You are not a backup plan. You are not a resource. You are not a convenience. You are a person with a dream, with a mind that deserves rest and mornings that belong to you, with a life that is not a public utility for other people to access whenever they feel like it. Saying no is not the end of kindness. It is the beginning of honesty. It means you are choosing to keep enough of yourself intact to actually matter not just to others, but to the person in the mirror who has been waiting a very long time for you to come back. So say no today, not forever, not to everyone, but where it counts, where it protects the part of you that still believes in what you're building. Protect the candle. Keep enough light for yourself, because the world will not remember you for the times you emptied yourself out for them. It will remember you for the times you walked in strong, full, and on fire and did something only you could do. If this story sat with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are done running on empty, drop one word in the comments, just one word, enough. That is where the change begins.